There is a point where thinking stops leading and movement takes over. Not because reflection no longer matters, but because the body and mind have learned the rhythm of progress through repetition. This is the moment when hesitation feels unnatural, when pausing too long creates discomfort instead of safety. That shift does not arrive through motivation. It arrives through exposure, through showing up so many times under pressure that action feels more familiar than avoidance. What once required effort now feels automatic. The system adapts. The internal resistance weakens. This is how instinct is formed, not by desire, but by proof. Each completed task reinforces a quiet truth that momentum is safer than stagnation. The person who reaches this stage no longer asks whether they should move forward. The question has already been answered by experience. Momentum changes identity before it changes outcomes. The first thing that disappears is negotiation. No internal debate, no emotional bargaining. The day does not begin with questions about readiness. It begins with execution. This is not obsession. It is alignment. The mind understands what the body has already learned. Forward motion preserves clarity. Stillness invites doubt. This realization simplifies everything. Energy stops leaking into unnecessary decisions. Focus becomes directional. There is less noise because there is less confusion about what matters. Each step taken reinforces the default behavior. Action builds certainty. Certainty builds consistency. Consistency builds a version of self that no longer needs external pressure to perform. A promise made internally carries weight only when it is honored in private. The world is full of declarations that cost nothing. What reshapes a life is the quiet agreement you make with yourself when no one is listening. The agreement to show up even when enthusiasm is gone. The agreement to finish what was started. The agreement to hold standards when shortcuts appear tempting. Psychology is unforgiving here. Self-trust is either built or eroded by behavior. Every broken promise weakens internal authority. Every kept promise strengthens it. Over time, the mind learns whether it can rely on you. That reliance becomes stability. Stability becomes confidence. Confidence becomes fuel. Discipline becomes lighter when it is no longer forced. At first it feels heavy because it contradicts old habits. Later it feels natural because it aligns with who you have become. This is adaptation at work. The brain rewards consistency by reducing friction. Tasks that once felt exhausting require less mental energy. Resistance fades not because the task changed, but because you did. This is why persistence matters more than intensity. Intensity burns fast. Persistence rewires systems. The person who stays long enough in the process crosses a threshold where effort no longer feels heroic. It feels normal. That normal becomes dangerous to anyone competing with comfort. Preparation does not announce itself. It shows up when pressure arrives and panic does not. When something unexpected happens and your response is measured instead of frantic. This calm is not luck. It is earned. It is the result of repeatedly choosing action when retreat would have been easier. The nervous system recognizes familiar stress and no longer overreacts. This creates space for better decisions. Better decisions change outcomes. When challenges arrive, they no longer feel like threats. They feel like variables to manage. That mindset shift is what separates those who crumble from those who adjust and advance. There is power in knowing that whatever stands ahead will meet someone who has already endured worse internally. Not because circumstances were harsher, but because standards were higher. The inner work creates resilience that external events cannot easily shake. This resilience is quiet. It does not seek validation. It does not require reassurance. It operates on principle. Forward movement is chosen because it is the only option that aligns with self-respect. Retreat is no longer tempting because it contradicts identity. Identity once solidified, becomes the strongest force in behavior. Promises kept over time reshape expectation. You begin to expect follow-through from yourself. That expectation alters how you approach challenges. Tasks are no longer framed as optional. They are framed as necessary. This removes emotional drama from effort. Work becomes procedural. Progress becomes systematic. This is where freedom emerges. Not the freedom to relax, but the freedom to move without internal resistance. Life becomes less about fighting yourself and more about directing energy outward. That shift accelerates everything. Consistency builds a buffer against chaos. When systems are in place, disruption loses power. Missed motivation no longer halts progress. Bad days no longer derail direction. The structure holds. This is why promises matter. Not as moral commitments, but as stabilizers. They create predictability within yourself.